Hey guys, this is Ray, and today I'm doing something a little different. I'm going to be doing a series of interviews talking with people about food and their journey and what happened throughout the journey. And for this segment, I thought that Kim and I would make up 5 questions for each other, and we don't know what these questions are, so we're going to ask these questions to each other. And I'm not quite sure how we're going to do the format. Like, did you want to do one question at a time or just ask all 5 and then switch off? But I'll leave that up to Kim.
We can just go back and forth.
Okay, well, I'll start with my first question.
Okay.
Before that, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing great this morning. Got to sleep in a little bit, got to take my time getting ready, just for having some coffee, so
It's a very great morning.
relaxing morning.
All right, so for the first question, some of these questions that I wrote were questions that I myself have been, I guess, asked and maybe have been concerned with on my own. So my first question that I'm asking you, had anyone suggested that changing your selected foods might change your health, and how did that make you feel?
Well, feels like there's a lot of possible answers to that. I mean, you definitely had been kind of pioneering that and suggesting that I eat differently, like starting my mornings out with berries and things like that. Around the time that I guess you started changing your diet, and we were thinking about making changes. We had seen quite a few documentaries that had a lot of good, like scientific research behind, what can happen to your body when you change what you eat. I mean, I kind of always been hearing that from my family, even though they were always sometimes the do what I say, not as I do type of people. But I mean, you were probably the biggest in kind of encouraging that.
So how did that make you feel?
Well, I mean, sometimes it did make me feel a little defensive because it made me think it was because I needed to lose weight, not necessarily that it was for my health. And that was probably coming from my own insecurities when it came to my weight, because I think a lot of women are very insecure about how we look, and body image issues, weight issues, always like, just, if I could just lose 15 pounds, 20, whatever, fill in the number. And it took me a while to realize that wasn't what you were saying. That wasn't the message. It really is a message more about treating yourself better, about kindness when it comes to the food choices that you make. Kindness as far as like, where's that food coming from? Who is picking that food? Did something have to die for you to eat it? Like all of these little things. So that's kind of how I felt about it.
That's kind of why I asked the question as well, because when I was working in the corporate environment, we had a health facility there on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor that I saw asked me about my food choices and suggested that I change some of the things that I was eating. And so from my own perspective, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that it's not just women who are concerned with hearing these things, because this absolutely puts something in your psyche when you hear it from somebody, when they ask you a certain thing.
Because I have had a doctor say that to me too.
So women and men alike feel the same way. And for me, that's why I asked that first question, because I know that it made me feel a little bit, maybe like you say, self-conscious or something. There's some kind of a self-judgment that was happening. And so for me to consider that what someone was saying wasn't offensive to me, it took a few active steps. But it wasn't until I actually changed what I was eating that I started to recognize, oh yeah, I get it, And so when I ask these questions, it definitely wasn't to or suggest these things. It's not to bring anyone down. It's more to help people to recognize the effects. But
Yeah, because
That
I
was
mean,
some-
there is also enough out there to evidence to show that it is detrimental to your health to be carrying around extra weight. I mean, that's been kind of shown for years.
Yeah.
And if you want to, you know, at least have a little more quality of life, not only just get older, but have a little more quality of life when you get there, and have the people around like that you love around longer too. I mean, of course, you want to encourage healthier behavior.
Yeah.
So, is it my turn?
It is.
Okay. My first question for you. Why did you decide to change the way you were eating?
So this goes back to the corporate lifestyle as well. There were a number of things that factored into why I was changing the way I was eating. I was taking a variety of blood pressure medications, and at one point in time, switching to a new medication because all the former prescriptions were not working. And changing to that new medication caused a significant drop in blood pressure and some issues where I just simply went to stand up and go walk into the hall, and I almost passed out and fell over in the hallway right there. But then also we had a lot of family members struggling with early onset diabetes and obesity related illnesses that I myself was starting to suffer from as well, including on my health risk assessments. It was said that I was pre-diabetic or borderline diabetic.
Yeah.
And so my fasting blood sugar was out of whack and everything was out of alignment. So the things that caused me to make these changes were a combination. There were people asking me if I might consider changing my lifestyle, what I was eating, and in addition, I saw that there were people succeeding at changing their health, and there was one particular speaker on a video that I watched who talked about this radical thing called the 7-day vegan challenge, and I, you know, we gave a lot of credibility to these people because they physically looked like they were manifesting the health that we were talking about. So the reasons were varied. Accomplishing it was a little more difficult, and it took teamwork and talking about these things, and maybe you know, slipping in some of the organic and the more mindful products in place of the things that we had. But overall, it was because my own health was failing, and I was literally sick and tired of that. And so after changing things, I stopped getting sick as much, and I was absolutely not as tired. So
yeah, I mean, your energy increased, and you, I mean, unlike me, you've been eating this way a lot longer, and I mean, you haven't gotten sick. I mean, all the times that I've gotten sick, and for sure I was assuming that I would give it to you, especially when I had that really bad viral infection. I mean, you just,
and those things happened in the past.
You never caught it.
We were able to see these things happen in the past because, you know, we put in that time, and so to see how it was before and then how things happened afterwards, you're right. There's a marked difference in health. My turn.
Oh yes, it is your turn, isn't it?
So, what made you commit to changing how you thought about eating in correlation to recovering your health? Or was this about your health at all?
I have been at certain points eating that way for periods of time, but I didn't really commit to it in a strong way until I had my shoulder surgery. And it's funny because there was no correlation between me needing that surgery and what I was eating. That surgery was, I had to have surgery on my shoulder to have a calcium deposit removed, and that was just something that happens. Apparently they're fairly common. But the fact that just the process of having to have surgery, which I never had to have before, the process of recovery for about 6 weeks, I had to wear an immobilizer on my arm. So I only had use of one arm and had to be pretty reliant on Ray and on friends and family for certain things. And just realizing that there's a lot that is preventable. I mean, that of course was not, but there are other health-related things that are preventable. And the more I do to take care of myself, even if I have something like that happen, I'd be in a better place to take, if I was just on my own, say, like if something were to happen to Ray. Like as we get older, I would be able to take care of myself. And I also figured that if I did take better care of myself, then the healing process would also happen a lot more quickly, and it did. My doctors and physical therapists were always amazed by how quickly I was progressing in the healing. And I mean, Ray was encouraging a lot of that. He really was. He purchased quite a few different supplements that were supposed to help in that arena. He got me started on vitamin C, which was very good because I figured if I'm already dealing with one thing, I don't need to deal with like getting sick or getting a cold on top of it. And he bought me some different supplements that are supposed to help with like cellular healing level, and he really did encourage me to just pay more attention to what I was putting in my body. So it was a lot more salads, a lot more vegetables. Really no, except maybe I think on one occasion, like really no meat the entire time. And that, I'm glad I did it. And it didn't feel like when I finally got to that point where I wanted to do it, when I was really ready, it was not a struggle. There are certain things, of course, we all get cravings for, but at the same time, the more that you're, I guess, committed to doing it, the more that you're really understanding how what you put in your body can really affect you positively or negatively, depending on what you are ingesting. It really just does make a difference in everything. I healed faster. I have better energy. I feel better, just almost, I guess, spiritually too, just calmer, less anxious. Of course, you have to be ready to get there, and it took me quite a while to get to that point. But once I was there, and it was kind of all in, and I was able to take off with relative ease, so to speak.
I like that. You mentioned something about how we have cravings, and we actually talked about that just the other day, and it was with a breakfast that we had, and the breakfast was a non-meat breakfast. It was basically strawberries with cream cheese and some kind of a little bagel.
Yes.
And it was the mixed berry jam that was mixed into that, and it was delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And it was absolutely rewarding and satisfying. And we touched briefly on how formerly a carne asada taco sounded just as amazing. Mm-hmm. But it seems to activate a different side of your mind when you think about that craving and how great it was. Having the I guess non-meat equivalent of a breakfast, and that was a breakfast. To have that and enjoy it and have it light up a whole other segment of brain, or at least it felt that way, was an interesting. It was just an interesting comment, I thought, that I would expand upon, because a lot of us think we can only have and receive pleasure from one type of food, when the reality is that there are other foods that maybe might light up a whole other side of your personality that you didn't know existed before.
Well, and this is I guess kind of a good piggyback question on what you were just talking about. So it kind of talks about that, and the question was there anything that was hard for you in making the transition to change how, when you made the transition as far as what you were eating?
There were a number of hurdles, but the number one difficulty is that we've been taught for so long to select from one palate and from one segment of foods, and we've rewarded ourselves enough to have self-reinforced that there is only one type of food that we can choose from. The most difficult thing was working in a corporate environment and trying to go against the grain, and maybe not against the grain, trying to go against the meat. And the most difficult part was that, and also thinking that I wouldn't be full, after eating plant-based for so long. And the more I did it, the easier it became, and the more people kind of commented against that action or made, I guess, I don't know what to call it, but I guess snide remarks. The more that the people who were trying to antagonize me into doing what everyone else was doing, the more I just kind of relaxed and started doing what felt right. And the more I felt better about what I was eating, the easier it became. So initially it was difficult because almost everyone in my circles eats a certain way. And it's hard to overcome that objection because, as you know, in a corporate environment, in some corporate environments, when you have free time to go out to eat with people, they'll take you to the same places over and over.
Yeah.
But at those places, I still found ways to work around things. And even then, in some cases, some places might only serve a certain type of food, but the less hungry I was, the more nourished I was, I should say, the less I needed to go out of my way to just fit in with what everyone else was eating, because I also recognized that what I was eating was absolutely changing how I felt. So the hardest thing at first was just going down that path and looking at the menu. For an example, we have one chain restaurant here that's located probably throughout Texas and maybe other states. And they have a number of amazing Tex-Mex dishes, but they have also a chili relleno, a cheese-based chili relleno.
Yeah.
And so everything there, the chips and salsa I enjoyed, I've always enjoyed that. And I switched to the chili relleno, which is fried. I'm sure a lot of people will say, that's terrible. But at the same time, it was the more mindful of the choices because I wasn't eating, meat-based. And so in my mind, I felt like I was able to have a more positive experience with that. So the hardest thing at first was just kicking off this new direction and sticking to the alternatives that I hadn't selected from for 40 years. So after having made that switch in my mentality, it started to become extremely apparent that I had a whole other array of things to select from and enjoy. So it was difficult at first, but it really got easier and easier. That's what I think. Okay, so with the changes that you've made, have you noticed any other changes other than you expected, and what were they?
Well, let's see. I guess I did notice a few because it's hard to think here because it's like I didn't necessarily expect to lose weight, but I did. Totally unexpected though. There's a couple. First, I've always had big issues with indigestion and heartburn for years. In fact, several years ago, I was taking Prilosec on a fairly regular basis. I only stopped after I had read some interesting studies that had found that can cause some bone issues. So I tried to cut back and not take it as much, but then I kind of had to switch to taking Tums because it was always a constant battle. And I've also had this interesting, I don't know what you'd call it, condition? I'm not sure what you would even call it. But as long as I can remember, even when I was a little kid, pretty much every morning when I wake up, I feel nauseous in the morning for the first, I don't know, say 30 minutes I'm awake. But then it goes away. But sometimes it can be pretty extreme nausea. And again, I've had this since I was a kid. And when I stopped eating meat and started eating more vegetables, more fruit, both of those things went away. I don't hardly ever have heartburn now. And on those rare occasions, it's usually caused by something that I probably hadn't ingested in a while. Like, I don't typically drink soda. So like, say if we go to the movies and I happen to decide I'm gonna, get a soda, that will generally cause some heartburn. But other than that, I haven't had that. And that the morning nausea also has completely gone away. And it was one of those things I didn't even realize at first until one morning I woke up and I was just kind of getting ready and I realized I don't feel nauseous. I don't feel bad. I feel good. I feel okay. And it just kind of struck me all of a sudden. And now I've gotten used to feeling that good, and I kind of probably am taking it for granted. But yeah, those are the two kind of unexpected things that I've realized were happening.
Yeah, I realized that too. Like you say, it took time to recognize certain changes in myself. The most unusual change that I hadn't recognized was during week 3 when I happened to be in a place called Big Bend National Park, and I went on this super long hike.
Mm-hmm.
And usually after a long, strenuous walk, I would feel sore at least the day after or 2 days later. And I never got sore, and I never really had to stop. And that was something I hadn't expected, and I wasn't able to test that boundary except for after an amount of time had passed.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. I mean, these other symptoms, like you said, I had some kind of spotting on my back, on my skin.
Yeah.
These are things that are unexpected. So the unexpected health results are something that it sometimes takes a while to recognize.
Yeah, to just all of a sudden you just kind of notice it, and it's like, oh, okay,
that's different.
Yeah. In a good way.
Yeah.
But still.
Okay.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. Also kind of piggybacking, I guess. Great minds think alike. What was the most surprising change you've noticed?
One of the most surprising changes that I noticed, the first was the one that I already had mentioned. It was really surprising to me that I didn't get sore. The weight loss I had expected only because I heard other people talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that I thought would happen, but as it began to happen and happen easily, that was, to me, it wasn't a surprise. But the most surprising thing to me was for a long time, ever since I can remember, I've not been able to gain muscle. And I did a measured, incremental, I guess, self-study where I decided to do a set of 10 sit-ups and 10 push-ups and 10 curls with a measured amount of weight. And I gained 10 pounds of muscle. The interesting thing about that is for my whole life I've done things where I've tried to gain muscle because muscle is the way that you expand your capabilities, you become stronger. But to burn fat, if you have more muscle, you can burn more fat, supposedly. So I always thought, well, if I gain muscle, then I'll be able to achieve my results faster.
Mm-hmm.
Well, during the first, I guess, year and a half of me changing to mostly plant-based, I didn't work out at all. I didn't have time for it, And so after I kind of plateaued during my weight loss and maintained a constant weight for a certain amount of time, I decided to see, well, what next? What happens next? Now that I'm eating a certain way and have lost all of the, a huge percentage of the weight that I was unaware I could lose so easily, I wondered what will happen if I just apply some workout to this. And so at that point in time, that's when I decided to, for 30 days, go ahead and carry out a certain workout regimen, and I gained 10 pounds of muscle. So the most surprising thing to me is that Whereas I've heard all my life protein, meat and protein and steak and, lean meats to gain muscle. The easiest time that I ever had gaining muscle was when I ate mostly plant-based. And that's how I continue to eat as a result of these fantastic side effects that I've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is what I think was fantastic. And people don't really talk about that. So what was easy about this process and what was difficult about this process?
Well, I would say the easy part is that I'm generally the one that does the grocery shopping, does the cooking, and I'm not afraid to kind of experiment a little. So being the one already kind of on the front lines of that to be able to make the choices and pick different things, find recipes, try things out, that made it easier. But as far as difficult, it was well, probably the most difficult part was when I went back to work. I mean, it was a lot easier when I was home because, again, when I had my shoulder surgeries, when mostly this started, I was home for a month and a half?
Yeah.
Almost 2 months, recovering, and that, when you're in your own sphere, it's a lot easier. Of course, you can snack when you want to. You have a that you will eat. That's our son, and it's you can just control a lot more of the process. And then when I go back to work, they have some vegetarian options, but not that many. Especially if you happen to go down late in the afternoon. I mean, you might. It can be kind of slim pickings. And I can't always. There are some great places around work that I could go, like Salada, to grab a quick wrap, grab a quick salad. I love Salada, by the way. Not a plug. I'm just saying they're a great place. But I can't always get away during the day, depending on how much I have on my plate, how busy things are. So managing what I would eat when I was at work was it still can be difficult some days if I don't plan ahead, if I don't have certain things I can bring with me. Because I'm like everyone else, I don't get hangry like some people do, but if I do get really hungry, like at the end of the day, then that is the time where it's a lot harder to make those kind smart choices. Excuse me. So that's probably been the most difficult part, is like sometimes I do have to plan ahead, think ahead, to be ready for that, like during the week when I'm at work. Because I also don't like to eat some of the things there, even some of the vegetarian options, because even though they say that they account for a certain amount of like sodium and things like that in them, it's still, I mean, they display the numbers, I can see it, and it's still it's on the high side. So I try to avoid eating at work when I can.
Okay.
So, okay, because you do this quite a bit, when you go out or travel, how do you decide what to eat?
The decisions about what I eat come a little bit more from what you instilled in me for being mindful about the choices that I make. And so in a lot of cases, there are areas that, let's just say up in the Yellowstone region, for an example, one of the staples around there are huckleberries. Mm-hmm. So I'll find a huckleberry stand and I'll eat from there. Sometimes there's people that, it's like our fruit stands here that have cantaloupe and watermelon and peaches, but generally up north you'll find huckleberries and raspberries and blueberries and a selection of nuts from the area. And so for those areas that I go to, I try to focus on things that are free of preservatives and chemical additives. And to me, that's a mindful choice, because all these preservatives and chemical additives are usually in foods that are packaged and shipped long distances without any kind of consideration whatsoever about the end result health-wise. So when I travel, what I try to do is get a little bit of insight about the local markets, what their equivalent of a wholesome foods type place is, and I'll shop there. And shopping at these locations, usually the communities have people in these areas who are actively seeking out those mindful products for us. Just as an example, one of my favorite places in Terlingua by Big Bend is the Cottonwood store.
Oh, I love the Cottonwood.
Think about all the products they have, and
they have like an amazing variety of like organic products.
Absolutely.
And it's just really amazing.
And I thought it used to seem ridiculous to pay like $5 for a bottle of juice or something like that, but at the same time, in terms of the value that I've received, I've also seen my health go in a direction where I'm no longer having to subscribe to these prescription medications to control my health. So in the long run, when it comes down to it, because I'm not suffering these same downfalls of a lot of what our other foods are causing, I feel like I'm basically paying the money up front to have my health now, and also to enjoy it later, which gives me more years of productivity. So being mindful about what I'm selecting is something that you taught me as you started mentioning the stores here, like the Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and Sprouts and even some of the stuff that's in our more common stores like Central Market. You can look for organic and find that some of the products that we're buying, even chocolate, there's chocolate that's basically being harvested with what would be called child labor by our own country's designation, and those chocolates are usually the ones that are going on sale.
Well, and some of it's just, as a consumer, you have to do a little bit of legwork. You have to want to have to seek out knowledge about the products that you're buying, and sometimes make some changes to your choices, accordingly. It's like you were mentioning with the chocolate. I recently discovered a chocolate company that the company is something like 40 or 44% of the company is actually owned by the cocoa farmers themselves.
Wow. So
because of that, they can of course ensure that they get a fair amount for their product and for their workers, and can also ensure that their conditions are good. And the person that made that company or put it together, that was what she wanted. She wanted to have a company that was kinder, that let the people that basically are supplying the product for supplying the base product that goes into the final product, have them have a say in what happens, as they should. That's their life, their livelihood.
And being said, that's the other thing about shopping. I don't look at the price first. I look at the overall, the overall end result of what it is that we're supporting. If we're supporting something local or something that's sustainable like that, that's mindfulness. And if we're getting the big bag of not so fun health-sized products, then we basically come out with another result altogether, even though it's at a steeply discounted price. So we sometimes we get what we pay for.
That's true. That is true. Your turn. I'm losing track.
So
So.
I've noticed that your clothes fit differently.
Oh, thank you.
And that you can seem more at ease somehow.
Yes.
Has this changed how anyone else has seen or conversed with you recently?
It has. I feel like I get, and this is not like in a, I feel like I get noticed more, I guess. Like I get paid more attention, not like just, you know, from everyone. It's kind of amazing. It took me a while to realize that my clothes were fitting differently, and I think it was you that first pointed out, like when my jeans were getting a little baggy and starting to fall down some. And then I recently, I did this, what is it? It's called a 30-day minimalist challenge. There's a YouTuber that I watch a lot of her videos, and she is a minimalist, and she has a 30-day challenge with worksheet that you can print out, and kind of you go through all these different categories. Like you start with clothes and accessories. So I think the second item on the list was going through like all of your clothes. So I went through everything category by category, tried on all my shirts, all my pants, everything, and I was surprised to find how many things didn't fit me anymore. Like there were things that, it's okay, baby, it's okay. That how many things that I purchased when I was larger, mostly to try to hide my shape, and they just didn't fit anymore. They didn't look flattering. So I cleared quite a bit out of my closet. And the most surprising thing I found was yesterday when I was going through, when it was the time to go through accessories, and I have one belt to my name, which I haven't been able to wear for quite a long time, because the last time I put it around myself, the buckle and the very end of the belt, like they kind of barely touched. And so I just put it around myself yesterday just to see where it was at, and I was 3 notches in on that belt. So it went from being where it was probably just would you know, sit around me like this to where it's, I mean, that's a pretty good amount that apparently, but sometimes you don't notice that. If you see yourself every day, you're around yourself every day, and if change is gradual, you don't always pick up on those things. And it's more when you run into somebody that you haven't seen in a while, and, you know, I think it was my friends at work, I ran into her and I hadn't seen her in a few months, and she said, "Where's the rest of you?" And I was like, yeah, there's a little part of you that wants to be just a little bit like, really? Was I that big? But then there's a part of you that, you know, wants to preen just a little bit because you're feeling pretty good. And it does a lot for your, because like I said, you know, most women, of course, have most people, sorry, don't mean to be sexist. Most people have body issues, and we don't get complimented and built up as much as we probably should, even by ourselves. I mean, we're our own worst critics, and so we're usually the ones that are, you know, the voice in your head. You know, the voice in your head is that's telling you how horrible you are. Is usually your own, because how many of your friends would talk to you that way? Nobody, and we're not our own friend most of the time, like we should be. So yes, I have been. I feel different, and I do get looked at differently. I get treated differently a bit, and it's nice. It's positive.
I agree.
Okay. Final question, I guess, for me.
Final question.
What advice would you give to someone who is trying to change their eating habits?
The biggest advice that I would give to someone who's trying to change their eating habits is to realize that this takes many steps. The first step is first recognizing that there is an alternate path that you can start walking down, and to just start changing things one at a time. Like I say, for me, my inspiration was watching a person on YouTube who talked about a 7-day vegan challenge, and then recognizing that, well, that guy doesn't eat meat all the time, and he's suggesting that there are a lot of vitamins and minerals in our plant-based foods. So let me just replace maybe 1 day a week not having meat. And in the past I used to suggest that people just try it 3 days a week, you know, because that's some kind of a measurable goal to work towards. But the first and foremost thing is to accept for yourself that you can do something different than everyone else is doing, especially if you're looking to achieve any kind of results that someone else is achieving. Look at the successful people who are achieving those same results and find out what it is that they're doing. A lot of times people will try to sell something additional to add to the foods that you're already eating, in a way to try to get you to achieve those results that you're after. But in other cases, there are people telling you that for the same cost as you're already paying for food, you can just buy a different food. And so the biggest step that I would suggest is to research who is succeeding. Research who is succeeding and how they're succeeding, but also before all of that, accept that you can absolutely do these things and feel monumentally better in doing these things just by taking those first few steps. It's not, some people will say it's not scientific, but and some people might say that this is they'll just laugh at the end results. But in the long run, the biggest thing is to be your own individual, be true to yourself, and recognize what truly makes you happy, and also that you can feel a different form of happiness, as we talked about when we talked about the cravings earlier today. We can absolutely, San Antonio is one of the best taco places ever. I've been traveling a lot, and we really do have some of the best array of foods, barbecue included. But at the same time, there are a whole other segment of menu items that we've probably overlooked for our entire life if we're at this point where we're questioning whether or not we can do anything different. So the biggest thing is to be true to yourself. If you really want to move forward, just start making those incremental steps. We started with one direction, and in the long run, the whole pantry has been switched out from the type of foods that we had in the pantry. The whole refrigerator is completely different. It has different products in there, but it started on a one-by-one basis, and it was a gradual process that began with the first step, which was wanting to do it to begin with, and then actively taking control of what comes into our hands in exchange for the money that we're working so hard for. So that's it. Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I think we had I think it was a really great conversation segment that covered a lot of bases that hopefully will answer a lot of questions. If anyone has any questions, be sure to message us or respond in any of the formats that we're going to post this in. Kim and I will both be able to answer your questions, and be sure to share this and subscribe if you really like this kind of content.
Thumbs up, subscribe.
Have a great day. And next time we'll try to work on keeping, actually Tracker should be showcased. I think that's why he was trying to get attention in the video. Next time we'll try to showcase him a little bit better, or at least make sure he's not barking and scaring everyone as much while we're recording these videos.
He is pretty photogenic.
He is, absolutely. So have a great day. Thank you so much.